have no talent for waiting. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And what do you want with a pasty scholar? My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Hamnet.
Hamnet.
I was not prepared.
Like with John Hamm?
I know there was a lack of ham in general in this, although I did appreciate the first words that came on screen, which we'll get to. It explained the whole thing for me. But we are not alone today to talk about this remix of the great bard's work, Shahir.
No.
We are joined, Topam fam, by someone it is my monstrous pleasure to welcome for the first time for the pod, speechwriter, comedian, and executive producer of my favorite NYC comedy-based comedy debate game show that I have personally lost at, Abolish Everything. Please welcome the wonderful Mr. Chandler Dean. I'm going to keep that whole fuck up of me in there, just so we're very clear.
Well, that's a good thing, because the trick is never to let down your guard, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. This is the perfect high energy beginning to what will be one of the most tragic films you discuss on this podcast, and I'm glad to do it with a big old smile on my face.
That's right.
Chandler, I was because I have not participated in Abolish Everything. Matt has given us trial runs of his performances, which we have all sat through, and it's been a lot of fun to actually observe and to see how the show is going. Could you tell us how Abolish Everything kind of started out, and where it is today, so people can see it and find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Abolish Everything is, in fact, a comedy debate show where comedians talk about a subject matter they want to see abolished from society, and a panel of improvisers called the political establishment tries to maintain the status quo. And I've been doing it in New York since 2022. Started off in a tiny, crappy little basement comedy theater with a handful of audience members, then pivoted to a fancier basement comedy theater with slightly more audience members, and it slowly snowballed over the years until we started becoming a little bit of a thing at Caveat on the Lower East Side. And then at the beginning of last year, Nebula started coming in to film the show, and we developed it for streaming and TV. And for the last year, we've been taping for Nebula and just wrapped up filming season 2. And yes, indeed, Matt Kroll was, lost, as is his wont on Nebula shows, as I'm sure has been discussed at length.
Yes, a few times.
Yeah.
But I can reveal that this coming season, Matt was redeemed by audience vote and brought back for our Abolish Redemption episode. And so while we will not discuss the results of that episode, the audience and myself included were extremely thrilled with Matt's performance, and he's the people's princess, so to speak. Yeah.
On the note of top 5 cinematic princesses, go, Chandler.
Toadstool. Yep. Fuck. I can only think of Mario ones.
That's fair. No, let's go back out of that
Princess
question.
Bride. Any other princess?
Yeah, all the princesses.
Princess Leia.
No. When it comes to movies, because we've hung out at parties and things, and we've discussed various forms of media, and we've discussed movies a little bit, but what about what would you say your cinematic vibe is when you're going to the movies? What are you looking for? What experiences have you enjoyed? Where do you land on this cornucopia of different styles of films? One of which we will be discussing today.
Yes. Well, I would say I feel like I've been pretty tapped in to just the movie discourse. I have to admit that what really it hooks me in every year is the award season speculation. I love keeping up with that. I don't do fantasy football, but of course I do the Vulture Movie Fantasy League. And my wife and I, when we first met in high school, the thing that bonded us was that we were more into movies than any of our other friends, and we were watching the Oscars live instead of hanging out with people. And so for the last maybe 10, 11, 12 years, we have both committed to watching every Best Picture nominee together. And as time has gone on, we've gotten better at following the tea leaves and also expanding our minds a little bit beyond the Academy's tastes. So yeah, I try to be like pretty tapped in on the zeitgeist. I admit that I have, and I studied film and TV and political science in college. So, you know, I got some of the history down, but I have to admit, I'm like way more locked into, you know, the cinema of the last like 15 years. I would say I'm into that. I wouldn't call myself like a film history buff.
Right. Well, I was curious, just tapping into your show and thinking about the last 15 years of films that you've watched and maybe the award shows as well. What would you, Chandler Dean, like to abolish from the film going public or the film or films in general? What of films would you abolish?
You know, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, I'm getting annoyed with how locked in that the narratives get sometimes, where it's like there's the self-fulfilling prophecy of like, no one has seen this movie, so it's got no chance to be recognized. And so then people dismiss it and they never go see it. So I don't really like how that stuff gets buried. So there's a part of me that's like, you know, should we abolish Academy members having access to any of the other awards news? Like, you have to lock them in a room. They can watch as
Like
many
a
of the
jury
movies from
poll.
this year as they like, but it's just like, it's just a pure alphabetical order list. You can't see what bullshit that the Golden Globes was bribed to put on their nominations list, you know, because I'd be really curious if you didn't have all of that, you know, what would rise to the top? I'd like to think that a couple other things would sneak in.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Golden Globes was just announced this week, and coming in for dramatic motion picture was The Secret Agent. It was Just an Accident, the Jafar Pahani film, Frankenstein, Sinners, Hamnet, and Sentimental Value. So we are kind of getting into that award season now, and that's partially why Hamnet made the rounds so well for us and kind of ended up on our list as well. We, of course, I think we both really enjoyed Nomadland by Chloe Zhao last time. But I have been, you know, in terms of tapping into watching how the zeitgeist is moving, the interesting thing that's happening, which is going to be related to the next part of this conversation, is the budget conversation around, the box office conversation around the award winners. And there's this sort of been this derision of every award nominee other than Sinners, because Sinners made a shit ton of money.
Not
but
that they didn't try when it wasn't profitable already on opening weekend, but yes. Yeah.
It's already profitable, and so people are like, well, Sinners is the clear winner because it's already made a ton of money. Everyone went to see it. Why would, we'd be talking about like Jafar Pahani's Iranian film about like, torture in the Middle East, or The Secret Agent, a Brazilian film about the post-Brazilian dictatorship. But yeah. And so it's been fascinating to watch. I guess in terms of the awards movies coming out as well, like are there anything... is there any either front runners or things that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like everyone else, was totally enamored with One Battle After Another. I do think it seems kind of steamrolly, but I don't necessarily mind it when it's one that I was really into. I kind of felt the same way like in the Oppenheimer year when it was just like, oh yeah, it's a little bit boring that it's winning everything, but like, I fucking love that shit. So, what are you going to do? So yeah, very much. But I'm also like, honestly, Avatar Fire and Ash, I'm a big believer. I'm loving the sort of like the cyclical discourse where like everyone once again is stepping on the rake and being like, oh, I don't know if James Cameron's going to pull it off again.
This might be the year. This could be the year.
Lucy and the Football.
He's even kind of indicated it himself. Is like, maybe I can't get away with this 3 times in a row.
Yeah. Those ones you mentioned, I feel like we've got a good shot at maybe 3 international movies getting nominated for Best Picture, in one group, in a way that's, never happened before. And the big question mark is Marty Supreme, I feel like, which I don't think I'll get to see until it's publicly released. I missed it at, New York Film Fest or wherever else I could have had the chance. And so that's one that I'm very, very excited about. And I feel like is the one big question mark that could like upend everything still.
Yeah, I've been talking about Marty Supreme for a little bit this year, just because I think it's interesting to see like how the Safdie split has worked
Yes.
out with Josh and Benny Safdie kind of going their separate ways, and the Smashing Machine. I kind of wanted to see the Smashing Machine up against Marty Supreme, but it kind of feels like the Smashing Machine has kind of done its run. It may have a pull for Best Actor for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I don't know. I know that's obviously what they were really going for with that particular performance, but we'll see. I think the hype around Marty Supreme is only building at this point, and it has got fantastic reviews. So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
It's releasing on Christmas.
Yeah, because it's an awards push. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, Timothy Chalamet is becoming the Prince of Christmas because it was a complete unknown last year, and then before that, Wonka.
Yeah.
And like,
Dune
I think he's trying to do. Right. Well, and so like Will Smith owned July 4th for like 8 years in a row in like the 2000s. And I feel like this is the real test of Timmy as well, because he has done very well in those movies, but everybody knows Bob Dylan, Wonka's IP. So like if Marty Supreme can make money, I think it cements him as like undeniable movie star.
So one of your top 5 cinema princesses.
He would absolutely be a top 5 cinema princess.
Well, I want to just talk very briefly before we get to the movie this week as well, just about the big news that is happening this week, which may prompt a rewatch of Oliver Stone's Wall Street if we needed to get a primer on what a hostile takeover actually is. But the big announcement this week is that Warner Brothers had accepted a bid from Netflix to be purchased, which of course Warner Brothers is a major asset, including not just a studio production asset, but also an owner of several other networks and such as CNN and Discovery, and a major swath of IP, including Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. And this was then upended by the fact that our recent acquisition by Skydance Pictures of Paramount was also then thrown into the mix. They were formerly an unsuccessful bidder for the Warner Brothers sale. I will call it a fire sale if I need to, but they have offered countering Netflix's $87 billion offer for Warner Brothers. Paramount, again, who was just recently bought by Skydance for a sort of weirdly small number, relatively speaking, has offered in the vicinity of $107 billion as a direct $30 per stock offer for Warner Brothers, which is quite huge. And,
also a little bit strange, knowing that I have very many friends who are being laid off due to that merger. So it's amazing that they're just finding all the savings,
Well, as mentioned, so the interesting part of this is that the financing for this deal, obviously the Skydance acquisition of Paramount is kind of fueled by the fact that the owner of Skydance is the family Ellison, who is the son of the founder Larry Ellison, who formed Oracle, an incredibly wealthy person who may have also made a bid for TikTok as well this year. And the purchasing financing for Warner Brothers by Paramount is a sort of partnership between Allison's fortunes and Saudi money and Jared Kushner's investment funds as well.
Really all people that I love all of their creative works.
Look, I
like Kushner's old stuff.
Yeah, his old stuff really hits. It hits different today, but when it dropped, man, woo!
But I had thought of this phrase prior to hearing another reporter talk about it, and that was Kyle Buchanan over at the New York Times, who quoted one of my favorite franchises that would be absolutely appropriate in this situation, which is Predator versus Alien.
Yes.
No matter who wins, we lose. Which was, I think, the quote to describe how to read this hostile takeover. There's lots of details in this that are kind of still up in the air. The Paramount, the Netflix purchase would obviously take a couple of years and would have to go through SEC filings, which could be controlled by the Trump empire. I say the Trump empire, not the White House. And so there's lots at stake here in terms of like where we'll be seeing movies in the future. Netflix obviously has a vested interest in direct to streaming movies as opposed to theatrical runs. And this is, of course, what Warner Brothers is known for this year alone, with 3 of the largest grossing box office winners this year, including Sinners, Superman, and not One Battle After Another. Actually, that didn't pull in a lot of money, but Minecraft. Yeah. So they have pulled in theatrically one of the biggest box office hauls of the year. Not to mention in strong awards contention for the Oscars and Golden Globes this year. So I'm curious for both of you. I obviously, look, reading the tea leaves, none of us really have any insight into this beyond our opinions, because this is a large, complex, moving beast. How this will play out will be fascinating to watch over the next few years. But I mean, I'm curious how you feel about, this entire sort of ecosystem of cinema changing and evolving as we speak.
Chandler, you wanna go first, or shall I?
Sure, happy to do it. I mean, I feel like I'm constantly thinking about, one, corporate consolidation, and 2, just like the drying up of, traditional, audience to product relationship as it's happening. Because, obviously being in this creative field, I moved to New York to do comedy with dreams of writing for late night TV. There are now like 2 of those shows left, and they're all almost certainly going to be gone within a decade, and that sort of traditional model of like, broadcast television original content is going away. So many cable networks have already been stripped of anything new being made, and they're just like running infinite reruns of like the cheapest stuff possible, so as it is, it's already a pretty bleak landscape. And then when you eliminate buyers of content, it gets worse, because then suddenly creators have less and less leverage to potentially shop things around town. And so that's why I agree with the sort of notion of who should make this purchase? It's like the fact that the purchase is happening to begin with is the loss. It's already kind of over. Not to mention that Warner Discovery was already one of the most, mismanaged, kind of organizations that was making all of these cynical plays just for immediate shareholder value, lest we forget Coyote versus Acme.
Acme versus,
it could getting sold to Ketchup Entertainment or whatever it was, Batgirl, just get literally like completed movies getting thrown away for like a tax write-off. Like, it's just such an anti-artist, anti-consumer mindset that David Zaslav, has brought to that organization. So this is the logical endpoint of it. It's hard for me to get too invested in the will it be Netflix or Paramount, because I feel like the death of a historic, long-standing, incredible film and television organization is already behind us. And I was really getting hopeful seeing, again, in particular, it's like, it's not just that Warner Brothers had successful theatrical movies this year, but the fact that Sinners, an original project that also has, a really director friendly deal with Coogler, granted him, I think he gets ownership of the film after 25 years or something like that. It felt like the philosophy that they were taking was sort of inching more towards the, creator forward, artist ownership model that, Matt, that we benefit from on Nebula, like that is burgeoning on this end. It felt like they were like seeing where the wind was going and potentially following that. And this is in the exact opposite direction. So it's really disheartening. And you hate to see it.
Yeah. It's funny. The Alien versus Predator line, I do agree with, I think, to a point, until we get to sort of political ramifications. Like, it is both awful for all of the different reasons that you've both laid out. Like, none of us are going to win in this scenario. I do think that a Paramount Skydance Kushner Saudi deal is a bit worse. I believe that Kushner and the Saudis already are basically buying, what is it, EA? the video
right,
game
it was,
company.
announced this week as well. Yeah.
Well,
they're looking into purchasing that as well.
It's fairly far along from what I understand, and they make Call of Duty and all of those things, which again I don't really fuck with, but they are huge cultural touchstones, and there's a lot of it's so funny. I'll touch on this for a second, just from the gaming side of things. Those games, in many instances in the past, have just completely just like bulldozed history, and like there's things, especially like when it's dealing with stuff that happens in the Iraq War, or like changing the literal, like, we're saying this awful thing that happened was the Russians when it was in fact the United States. Like there's a lot of weird things that we have done as an American company to history in this. I cannot wait to see what the Saudi government, with their influence, as they continue their sort of whitewashing campaign of things, of their image of human rights violations and the murdering of journalists, that they essentially will do that with a large thing such as CNN and Warner Brothers and HBO, and like on that end of it. Like the Netflix side of things, I don't love Netflix's politics either, and I sure as hell don't like that they're just holding a gun to the head of movie theaters. But I think if Nerf gun to my head, I think I would rather Netflix out of the two if I'm going to have to make a call. I don't want cinema to die, but I also don't want a propaganda wing to get fully like put together into like one megazord of nightmare. The other thing I'll say is, with the end of this, like everything's becoming one thing, right? At some point when it is probably 2 or 3 companies, no matter how much palm greasing and nonsense happens, the quality of the content, even with the ton of AI slop that's coming out and a bunch of other things, the quality of the content will dip to a point where it is not profitable at all, and all of these made up numbers will collapse. Right. In my opinion. And I guess like this is my crazy thing with all these companies and people that want to buy in and do all this stuff. Are they just trying to see who can be the last group to be holding the bag when it dies? Or are they just counting on that won't happen during their lifetime? I don't understand the end game of this outside of it being a mental illness.
I don't have a good answer for that other than, movies are an important cultural touch point, but not to mention also an important indicator of how a culture perceives itself. So there is the enduring allure of both movie stars and the fact that, maybe 20, 30 years ago was probably the start of the end of the idea that movies were the center of culture. I think that argument could be made that social media content is now the sort of center of culture as we know it. But, if anything, the movie that we're about to talk about in this episode suggests that there is an enduring power of art that lasts through generations. And perhaps there is an idea at the center of this that whoever controls the ability to control narratives ultimately holds more power than those that actually in authority. This is a common thread through, political regimes throughout the planet. And, it's arguably... I think one of the interesting things that we noted this year was that a Chinese animated film has outgrossed almost every other film on the planet, and did so without doing much sales in the United States, which may indicate a shifting of the guard in terms of who is which country has the cultural landscape, dominates the cultural landscape as we know it. Ne Zha, and the movie I'm speaking of course, is Ne Zha 2, which is going to be on HBO in the next month or so.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that coin, you have Zootopia 2, which opened to something like 5 mil or 500 million or something like that, but 400 of it was in China because it was a dual release at the same time. So
so typically China has been a central marketplace for the United States.
Yeah.
But the fact that a Chinese film outperformed every American movie, and did it without the American marketplace.
No, that's kind of what I'm saying. They're hitting it from 2 fronts, right? They're becoming the cultural touchstone because they're driving the sales this much, and what shows well over there will become more important here than it probably ever has been due to those couple factors, because studios are going to be going for that audience probably more than us.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating time to dip back into the works of the old bard himself and talk about Chloe Zhao's new film, Hamnet. Matt, could you give us a little insight into what Hamnet is about?
I sure can, Shahir. The Internet Movie Database says that Hamnet is, quote, after losing their son, Hamnet, to plague, Agnes and William Shakespeare grapple with grief in 16th century England. A healer, Agnes must find strength to care for her surviving children while processing her devastating loss. Sure. Yeah, that is, there's an interesting bend there, but I like it. It's fine. I'd give that a solid 7 out of 10 on the old Internet Movie Database blurb rating scale.
It is a fairly literal, like here are the literal things that occur in the movie.
That's right.
But it's good in the sense that it doesn't actually reveal, I think, anything. I knew as much coming into the movie, and I was glad that I had an oversimplified understanding of what the movie would be before I saw it.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that note, Chandler, being our illustrious guest, why don't you start us off? What were your first impressions of this film?
So, I was ready to be devastated because that's what everybody was saying was just like how brutal and emotional and tragic the film is, and if you know the premise, you already know how heavy it's going to be. But I felt like I honestly often evaluate movies based off of if there's even a handful of moments that stick with me for an extended period of time, then that matters to me more sometimes than, just like the pure, like, how much was I enjoying it moment to moment to moment? And I was enjoying this movie moment to moment to moment, but it felt like one where that was really scoring high on the like striking visual imagery scale, on the sort of like little exchanges of dialogue that have like a really, that you turn over in your head scale. And also, a sort of opportunity to speculate where the things that appeared on the screen, there were moments that, didn't necessarily feel like they had to be literal, but maybe they are literal. Does this take place in a fantastical world, or are we seeing kind of interpretive moments that are reflecting the emotions of the characters? Like, I felt like it left a lot of room to turn it over and mull it over in a way, for the most part, in a way that I really appreciated. So it was one where I was like, I as I shared with Matt before the recording, I saw this film in between a couple of like work offsite days in Washington, D.C. at the AMC Georgetown, at 9:30 at night, knowing I had to wake up early the next day. And I could have Ubered home, but I chose to walk home in the cold because I wanted the time to process. Yeah. So that's how I felt.
Nice. Sheer, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I was interested in seeing this just from the point of view, I guess, like you mentioned, Channel, I kind of keep tabs of directors more than anything. And this is Chloe Zhao's second follow-up from her Best Picture win at Nomadland, with Nomadland. It's interesting to follow between Chloe Zhao and Nia DaCosta, the sort of embattled war scars that they have about working for Marvel or working for large franchises. They seem to have kind of talked about the fact that it's a difficult process and maybe not one that's suited for their particular talents. So Nia DaCosta has her new movie with Tessa Thompson, Hedda, which is available on Hulu right now, kind of closer to her earlier works, and has the sequel to the 28 Years Later franchise that is starting out now, but she describes as working for Danny Boyle as kind of like very refreshing compared to working in the Marvel ecosphere after directing Miss Marvel. And so, and Chloe Zhao obviously had kind of an interesting experience with the Eternals. That movie was not as well received or as I think it was kind of hoped for. She was sort of brought in to be a fresh voice for Marvel. Kevin Feige kind of spoke about the naturalism that she brought to it and her ability to work in natural locations, as though perhaps he'd never seen one before, which I thought was fascinating. So I was interested in it for all of those reasons. The actual sort of storyline of retrofitting Hamlet to a sort of fictionalized history of what may have happened in William Shakespeare's life and his wife's life. I think I sort of had vague notes about what this might be. And, to be fair, the movie does not hold much surprise in terms of what happens and what you think is going to happen. It is very sincere and very straightforward in terms of what it is dealing with in terms of grief. And this is the kind of grief that is particularly challenging for a parent. In that respect, I think the movie kind of worked on all the levels I expected it to work on. I was sobbing. There were people around me sobbing. I think it is a beautiful adaptation of Margaret O'Reilly's book of the same title that, reimagines the context around the creation of Hamlet and does the thing that I think, we talked about Portrait of a Lady on Fire as a movie that makes the interesting point of like, what do we know about the women involved in the creation of the great works that we enjoy and love? And this movie kind of says these are this is Agnes in particular is critically involved in the creation of one of the great, one of the greatest plays ever written. I was sort of curious. I'm not a huge Hamlet head, I guess I would call myself. I'd call that thing
ham hock?
a ham head, a hawk ham head. But I was sort of really fascinated in the way that like. I guess the thing I was wary about was connecting Hamlet's soliloquies to moments of tragedy in real life and retrofitting them. And there was sort of a couple of interesting ideas here, one of which is like, it actually relates to Macbeth, but like, the witches in Macbeth, perhaps being a sort of, a parody of what, Agnes might have been called as a sort of, a forest witch of some kind. And, there were interesting things like the to be or not to be, soliloquy that comes up here, which sort of gets retrofitted into an interesting idea. But the movie worked on all cylinders for me in terms of like delivering exactly what I thought it was going to deliver and doing it very, very well. And, I guess maybe the only hesitation I have about that is that, Chandler, like you, I did the same thing, which is that I biked home afterwards in the freezing cold because I wanted that sort of experience of like lingering in the movie and just kind of seeing if it stayed with me in that way. And I found myself kind of like letting it go pretty quickly. In terms of like the longevity of it, kind of like I let the emotional weight of it kind of go a little bit quicker than I thought I would. But that's not to say it doesn't work, because it completely works. And the tragedy of seeing a child go through this, and there's a beautiful irony to the fact that the book came out in March of 2020, at the beginning of our pandemic, and kind of focuses on a pandemic, or the Black Plague itself, is sort of really fascinating and kind of has an interesting echo to it. But yeah, I felt that the movie really, really worked, and I found it very beautiful. I think just, if anything, it is an incredible showcase for Jessie Buckley, and why she is, a movie star, and why she's an important movie star that we need to see more of. What do you think of it, Matt? You were hesitant to see the movie.
I was. I hesitant only because like I hadn't seen anything about it. I am on record disliking movies about writers. Okay. And this is the writer of writers, after all. Of course, that's not the point.
Any Shakespeare movie is out the window.
Yeah, right. No, it wasn't like I had any ire towards it or anything. It wasn't something I was excited to see. And my favorite thing happened. I absolutely loved it. Like, it was just a lovely, gut-wrenching time at the movies. Jamie and I saw it at 10 a.m., as I was telling Chandler before the show, at the Lincoln. And it's so nice to go to the 10 a.m. shows at Lincoln, because like it's just all old folks who like really give a shit. And like, it's just nice. And it was pretty full, which was lovely. The thing that I got lost in the most, I think, specifically was the cinematography. And we're talking about Chloe Zhao and her ability to magically use real locations. There's actually a Vanity Fair video with them doing their like dissection of a scene or whatever, and they were talking about even just the set of the scene when William is leaving, when she's peeling eggs, and they were talking about like the intricacies of the sets and like the real places and the set design and all the art direction there, and how the actors, it was like so easy for them to get so lost in it because you could walk up to every wall and, oh, is this sconce something that was like crafted just to look like one? No, this is one that's done by a guy in some English countryside who's been making the same thing in his family since the 15th century. Like it's all really, really authentic or at least complex. And you could tell that the actors were really having I was getting lost in their performances, not only because are they great, but I think they had a great sort of, no pun intended, set, and many times which was the outdoors to play around in. Side note, just on Chloe Zhao's career, I actually liked Eternals. I will still kind of go to bat for that movie. It was something different. Obviously, folks did not like it, or en masse.
I didn't hate it, to be honest with you. I didn't talk about it on the podcast, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, I liked it because it felt like a Marvel movie that was an anti-Marvel movie. Like, it just felt like it was trying to push against the boundaries as much as it could. And look, some of that shit doesn't work, but at the same time, it just felt refreshing. And I was like, I liked some of the characters. I hope they'd popped up. Not necessarily the stuff in the after credit scenes, and lo and behold, those haven't. And also, I like Paul Mescal. And Jesse Buckley, has been one of my favorite actors since I saw I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which I still pray will get a 4K release at some point. Thanks, Netflix. Let's see if we can get that done. I will go see anything she is in, sort of sight unseen, and she takes over this movie. Like, she's just actually, between her and the kid who plays young Hamnet, Jacoby Jupe. Which actually, I didn't know this either. Noah Jupe, who plays the actor playing Hamlet, is his brother who got brought in at the last minute, which is pretty cool. That, like, I don't know, that's just a nice little like side connection there. I think the child actor though, Jacoby, holy shit. Like, that's a kid that has more emotional understanding than I will ever hope to be able to convey in any conversation in my entire life. It was phenomenal. I could not believe, actually, all the kids were pretty damn good. But he just stole the show. Obviously, he was the one that sort of, I think, to your point, Chandler, with you never quite, like, it never dives into the ethereal or the non-realistic sort of moments of things. However, the closest thing is during his sort of final fever dream time, he looks up and off camera, you assume he sees death. And that was so powerful. And in my head, like, this is how I know it was super effective. In the moment, normally in a movie like that, I would stop and my analytical brain would be like, please don't show death. Please don't show death. And I did not think that until like 10 minutes later, when I thought, I'm so happy they didn't show death. And like it never knocked me. I never dissected it in the moment of it. In quiet moments later, I would think of something it was doing. And I think the last thing I'll say about it, the score. The score is insane, and it does move. It moves you right along in any. It's sort of the bomb that. And again, there's no like. I wouldn't say there's any points where I'm like, oh God, this is so rough. I'm leaving it. But like between the moments of intensity, the score like really like carries you along, much like I feel like the long treks you both described when you were leaving the theater. I got on the subway. I haven't got time for that. I had to go back to work. But I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. This is a contender for all of the things. Yay.
We should get into spoilers specifically, because the thing that I thought about in terms of like why the film didn't linger for me as much as I thought it did, despite the fact that I think it works, really has to do with the score. It is. You don't like it? It's not that I don't like it. It is Max Richter, who is a terrific composer, and unfortunately, the problem is, as that piece of music, the nature of daylight at the end of it, has been used so often in Shutter Island, in Arrival, almost in Arrival in a sort of similar way, in The Leftovers, I believe, and The Last of Us. That it is in, like, for me, it's an
in Jamie's Curse of Strahd campaign soundtrack.
Oh, really? Is it actually? Yeah, there you go. It's an instantly recognizable piece, and I just, there was just the sort of thing that's being leveled at this movie is that it's called grief porn, or, you know, like it kind of is, you know, turning the screw to make you cry at those moments. And while I disagree with that entirely, the one thing is the use of that particular piece of music, which I've heard so many times before in situations like this, I felt was like a really missed opportunity to make me feel something in a little bit of surprise or a little bit of like uncertainty about where I was. Whereas when that piece of music came on, I was like, and here we are now. And look, again, it worked. I sobbed, I cried, but I walked out of the theater going, man, I really wish they would like tried something different here. You know, like he scored
that track was your death for you that they showed.
Yeah. He scored the rest of the movie with like all original tracks, but that particular moment, which is the crescendo of the film, which is an incredible piece of filmmaking, is scored by a piece of music we've heard several times before. And that was just my one thing. I apologize if like I was just jumping on the fact that the score was the thing that you talked about there. Is like that was the one thing that I found myself just kind of going, just we've done this, haven't we? You know, I don't know if you guys felt about it that way, but like that was my thing there.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that alluded to that was, you know, something that happened in the movie. And when I was watching it, I was watching the ending. I was totally taken with it. I was really focused just on the action of what was happening, and the score was, you know, supporting it. But I wasn't really consciously thinking about it. And then I literally had the conscious thought, like, damn, this score is cooking. And then I remembered that I had heard that it was used before. So while I couldn't have told you where I had heard it before, I knew that was the case, and that did take me out of it a little bit. But I do feel like I kind of like, for a moment, felt like what it might have felt like to hear that for the first time, or think I'm hearing it for the first time. And it was totally working. And so I would love, I don't know, Matt, where you're at on this, but I'm like, I would love to hear what someone thought of the ending who either didn't know that they had heard it or truly had never seen any of the other movies or works that use it. It'd be tough. You'd have to, you know, find someone in a pod. But there's an argument to be made of like, okay, you know, it was in what, like Stranger Than Fiction, and then Arrival, and then also Shutter Island, and also The Last of Us. It's like, how many people get to use it? Because it works, and it did feel fitting. But I agree that it's cheaper than letting Max Richter cook and do something new.
I'm the closest to that pod person I think you might find. I heard it and only recognized it from Jamie's Curse of Strahd playlist that she made, because it was on there for our long-running D&D campaign. And I listened to, actually, my Spotify Wrapped is an embarrassment because most of it is like 20 minutes of gothic horror music. Let's go. Like everything, like it was just, it was insane. Sabrina Carpenter could not compete. Yeah. But my point is, I didn't remember it from other films. I clocked it from my Strahd mix, and I was like, oh, this must be a thing from something else neat. And then I just didn't care anymore. Like, I mean, we can sort of talk about other things before we talk about the very end too. But no, it didn't knock me at all.
I mean, to be 100% fair, it's a thing that 99% of people aren't going to notice, or if they do notice, aren't going to care about, because it does work. Like, it is a really beautiful cinematic piece of music, and it is working in all the right ways that it needs to in that moment to pull all of the strings that it needs to pull. It's just that, for me, you know, like I have a particular sense memory for hearing that score for the first time, and then hearing it over and over and over again in different movies. Yeah. And going, you know, each time I hear it, I go, man, this is a beautiful piece of music. Yes. You know, and it's really working with the scene that we're watching right now. But also I've kind of felt this scene before. And all I'm suggesting there is that my ability to have this movie linger in a long way kind of gets diminished by that.
Totally. Well, if she had broken out Arrival of the Birds by the cinematic orchestra in that moment, which, I think that's when I would, something that iconic, I would have been like, ugh, you ruined it. I've heard this as a TikTok sound, But I guess I felt like this piece is not quite to the level for me of ubiquity that I was, because again, I think I would have felt very different if like the instant it started, I'm like, oh, On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. But no, it kind of snuck up on me. And also the fact that this is a Max Richter scored film. So you kind of get like slowly led into it. It's also like, if anybody gets to plagiarize, it's the self, right? So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of back and forth on it. But I totally agree. Like I totally buy anybody who's like, what keeps this from being a unique classic, because so much of it is wrapped up in how you feel at the very end, is like that they didn't try to break through and like find if an original piece could have conveyed what this was conveying. Like I totally see it. I do think that is a little bit of a cop out for sure.
Well, it's funny, sort of taking things piecemeal and using them for in this case, in my opinion, really great effect, even though it is sort of like a component you're unplugging from something and plugging it back in. Let's talk a little bit how we feel about the thing that Shahir was worried about too, which is sort of, or I forget, one of you said this, so I forget but basically like the taking William Shakespeare's perceived life. And again, there's a lot of, we know Shakespeare in a lot of ways, and I'm going to use this in a farcical way, but also kind of in a realistic way, is a lot like Jesus. We know Shakespeare existed, but what he did and when is often changed a lot for various historical inaccurate reasons. So
you're saying Shakespeare was black. That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. No, the thing that I was really worried about in this, and it kind of plays into the music conversation, is how much like fucking Solo from Star Wars reference wise are we going to get the greatest hits of like, how many parsecs is Shakespeare going to take until he does the fucking the witches play or like other shit, right? Like they're going to pull from the greatest hits to remind you that this is William Shakespeare in this tragedy. But then this is the weird thing about it, and they do it a bunch. Every time though, and this is a credit to this film, I was delighted. Those are things that knock me normally. I'm always like, oh, do we really need to fucking Han Solo because he's alone? We have to give him a name, right? It has to mean something because of the thing, and he does the whatever. Like, here, they took those kind of things and I think did a rather eloquent job story-wise, wrapping them believably around a tragedy that can befall somebody. This person just so happened to be in this story, William Shakespeare. And I think the second half of this movie is all about the both healthy and unhealthy ways that he and Agnes deal with that grief. After, now we're in full blown spoilers, but after Hamnet dies, also weirdly, one of the most heroic, on-screen deaths I've ever seen. Like what a incredible fucking arc this kid had in Act 2 only. And I'm holy shit. But the way that they took elements that we all know of the greatest hits of William Shakespeare's works and life, and put them believably inside of this story with this screenplay. I know it was adapted from a book as well, but I haven't read it, so I can't say how aptly they did it there. I'm sure it was well as well. But like, I could not believe how on board I was with every like Leo pointing at the screen moment that is in this goddamn movie. Normally I'm like, come on. And here I'm like, nope, this all makes sense because of X, Y, and Z. Did you both feel that way? Or am I sort of, am I alone in this?
Yeah, no, I absolutely felt that way, and I think, very briefly, the reason why it all works, and I feel like the music thing is just kind of nitpicking, is that there's a genuine sincerity to conveying the depth of tragedy that this couple are going through, and it's buoyed by an incredible performance, and I think Chloe Zhao also just has an innate ability to read people in a room and to focus the camera on what is affecting them. Like her films, Songs My Brother Taught Me and The Rider are incredibly adept at just zeroing in on what a character is feeling at any given moment. And, she does that beautifully here as well. And I agree with you 100%, Matt. None of the to be or not to be's or the witches of Macbeth or even his relationship with his dad, his relationship with as echoed in Claudio in Hamlet's, relationship. None of that rang hollow or false or the moment I was thinking of was in the end of Fantastic Four, the Josh Trank film, when they were like, what did you call it again? Fantastic? I was like, that's the kind of thing I'm worried about, is those kinds of moments.
Waiting for him to pick up a skull.
Yeah. But not, this movie has none of that, even when it is actually weaving through history in kind of interesting ways. And I think that it comes down to, it is really sincere about understanding the tragedy at the center of this relationship. Now, it's very simple. Right. It's a very simplified, tragedy, but it's so gut wrenching. I think there's that moment when Jess Buckley's character Agnes screams at the death of Hamnet, and it is primal and big, and it is 100%. You feel it reverberate through the theater. So yeah, I agree. The movie works on every level.
Well, I also feel like it helps that this, of course, is not a great man biopic. The fact that it's William Shakespeare is ancillary for most of the film. I really loved how we don't hear his full name until they're at the Globe, and this whole time you just seeing him as semi deadbeat artist husband guy who just can't help but get thrown back into his work. Obviously, who he is, but it's so much a story about Agnes and Hamnet and the rest of the family, and he's his absence is kind of just more a part of an obstacle that she's having to deal with, such that when they finally stop withholding, and he's standing at the edge and he says to be or not to be, I'm like, let's go!
That's my boy!
It felt totally and completely earned to me, because there's so much discipline leading up to it, where it's this guy is not what this movie is about, but only once he's finally starting to reckon with the grief and actually put it into something, does it all kind of start to piece together. And then I think that because of that, then when they kind of go into overdrive and just start having you watch Hamlet, it's it's so much more affecting. It has so much more meaning. It takes on, that great significance. And again, it feels like everything that you're seeing is a resolution of something that was established earlier that at that point did not feel like chumpy Hamlet bait.
Yeah.
It was just things that were happening to the characters that were very emotionally affecting and pieced out, bit by bit. And then, again, maybe someone who is really familiar with the play, I've seen it at a production of it at some point. But I really don't have much knowledge. But to me, I was just I felt like what I was seeing, I understood it with much more depth because we're seeing it through Agnes's eyes after all of this. So yeah, I completely agree. I think those elements of it were deployed well. I could see someone being taken out of it with the to be or not to be monologue. That's the biggest swing, I think. But to me, I feel like they stuck the landing.
Well, then, speaking of the ending sort of at the Globe Theater, which is always cool to see when done correctly in movies. The way that, okay, we are all, in our different ways, gentlemen, I would say, we have crafted a piece of art or two in our day. However successful that art is, we can all judge that ourselves, etc. But everything comes from a place, right? Like everything that we make comes from shared experiences in our lives that we then sort of interpret and maneuver around things to make craft that we do. And something about Shakespeare that I always find interesting, and maybe I'm just not deep enough in it, is that I very rarely, like I have not been able to really, like, that's never really what's taught about Shakespeare. Like, it's just like, oh, he's the best and here's all of his best stuff. Like, and I know this is not real. Like, this is not a proven historical biopic. But what I really did enjoy here was the exercise of, oh yeah, we all know art really comes from places that are personal and that your lived experiences. Do you ever think about like this, one of the most lauded works ever, what sort of went into it from their personal perspectives and why? And to the point that was brought up before, when Agnes is watching the play and at first she's just like fucking pissed. And then as it moves on, it like she is able to share in the catharsis that he has been designing. And it's as if, and again, it goes back into that metaphysical space, like they actually get to say goodbye to their son. That as even someone who makes silly cartoons on the internet, that is something that like actually like as someone who does make things was, I think, what I, not in every piece of content that I make, of course, but like in a lot of stuff, like what I try to do, like I want to make sure that like whatever I am doing offers the most amount of people the ability to get into my head with what I am of the thing I'm trying to do, whatever that thing is. Again, nothing as deep as this, but I really appreciated the exercise of looking at Hamlet, the piece, from that perspective, because I personally, and again, maybe this is old hat for the ham hocks out there, I never had actually done that. And it felt really refreshing to see a piece of that play that I've seen a bunch of times from the perspective of dramatizations of the people that made it or were the causes of the memories that helped it be created. Does that make sense?
Well, and I feel like it's often a deus ex machina that it's just like, and then they, all the problems were solved because the art was so great.
Right.
But again, you just buy it because it's fucking Shakespeare and it's fucking Hamlet.
Yeah.
And also because of the way they play it out. And also I was going to say that the way Agnes reacts to that play is the full arc that Carolina has every time she comes to an Abolish Everything taping.
Yeah.
She comes in pissed at me for whatever I've done wrong. And then she's swept away.
Oh, by the magic, the pageantry.
Well,
and she's reaching out to the lectern.
Yeah.
That is what I actually really loved about the sort of mastery on display here was that ending. None of them talk about the beauty of the art that they have witnessed in front of them, but all of them experience it, and then we as an audience get to experience it as well. And it tells us this, like for Agnes, she, like you say, she's very upset that, how dare you speak the name of my child, whom none of you know, and whom none of you know what it is to be me and to bear memory to this child. And then, there's sort of the simplest conflict in this movie is this idea that she is grieving for the loss of her son, and she doesn't understand why Will isn't grieving in the same way. And, why does he leave? Like, why does he leave to go back to London at the height of their grief? And at the end of the movie, she gets to experience, well, this is actually how he grieved through his art. He wrote this, this story that allowed him to resurrect Hamnet into this world. And the incredible thing that she experiences, and then we, the audience, experience, is that everyone reaches out for Hamlet in the theater, and he kind of reverberates through the crowd and becomes both resurrected and eternal. And, it's this sort of like majestic idea that she has been grappling with her whole life, that she is both part of nature and distributed, like enmeshed in it. Like there's this idea that she is connected to nature in a way that is very different to most people. And, so she recognizes this. And as the beautiful thing that the movie sort of sets up evocatively, is that, nature and art have the same place in the world. There is this gap in this tree that she kind of emerges out of, and there is this empty space within the theater which Hamnet kind of moves into, and like
there's also a lot of Orpheus going on.
There's a lot of Orpheus and looking back. The incredible thing is that we all feel it. Like nobody says it, nobody talks about it, nobody in the middle of this movie talks about the nature of art and why art is important to Will. One person we haven't talked about is Emily Watson in this movie, who's just, I'm a big Punch Drunk Love and Breaking the Waves fan. So to see Emily Watson in this was just kind of like, oh man, here she is. And, she has that sort of incredible line, which sort of relates to the idea that human beings are embedded to nature, where she says which can be granted, that which can be given can also be taken away, and we must be on guard at all times because the world is unforgiving, and there is no rhyme or reason to it. And what Agnes gets towards the end of that movie, towards the end of that scene, is that yes, what can be given can be taken away, but we can also resurrect it ourselves, and we can, it can spread. And, Hamlet exists today. If Hamlet is today an idea of a representation of the spirit of Hamnet, that little boy, I know it's a fictionalized retelling, but then that is a true testament to the power of art and, the power of storytelling, and is why Netflix and Paramount really want Warner Brothers, because they need to be able to hold on to Casablanca for as long as possible.
I don't think that's why they want that. Yeah. So I guess
that's the answer we want to believe in.
Yes, we do. Let's jump into some final thoughts here. I'll start us off. Sheer, maybe you can go. Then Chandler can take us home. Although you probably wrapped up a lot of yours there. I'm not sure if we can go back and forth.
Yes, but I do. I mean, if you don't mind, Shahir, when I would love to hear, just, as the parent representative on this call, that was the thing that I was thinking about the whole time was, would all of this feel, like, would it be more resonant, or would it feel cheaper, or would it feel, needlessly intense, or, all of those things. I was really finding myself thinking about, if I were a parent, how would that impact my viewing of the film? So I'm curious how you see it from that perspective.
I think it's kind of it's not a cliche, but it is true that, like, I watch a movie all the time, and any child that's in a movie is automatically my child. And so, it's kind of like just a thing that I have to kind of live with these days, is just, and I've gotten used to it a little bit more. And I was also, I guess, bearing down, or bracing at least, for what this movie was going to do. So I think I was a little bit more guarded about letting myself go, like knowing what this film, what was going to happen to Hamnet and to the other people, So I think, oddly, in a weird way, I didn't fully have, and I think that's something I'm kind of navigating around, is I didn't fully have my guard down for watching this movie as a parent. I was kind of a little bit guarded and a little bit more prepared for it, and that is part of that. Maybe part of, I'm zeroing it in on the Max Richter thing. I'm zeroing it in on this idea that the movie didn't linger with me as much as I thought it would, even despite the fact that it worked. But like you said, the kid is incredible. The idea that he is going to sacrifice his, in his, imagination, sacrifice his life for his twin sister, is, tragic and heartbreaking and absolutely sincere. But yeah, there's something about the emotional register of this that made me feel like, I know what you're trying to do here, and I'm slightly prepared for it, as opposed to, oh my God, that is my child on screen kind of thing,
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And that's exactly the kind of register where I just, like, I felt totally out of my depth, like how much, a friend of mine, Patrick Vermillion writes great reviews on Letterboxd for every film he's ever seen, and he made a point which is basically like so much of this film depends on just whether you buy it, because it is totally sincere. It is like just like wearing its heart on its sleeve. It is unafraid to take these enormous swings, and it's operating at such a high level. And again, to me, that sequence of Hamnet sacrificing himself for his sister, which is something I was not spoiled for, literally when his sister was starting to die, I was like, I must be misremembering, because I thought it was the boy that died. And then once it started to piece together, I was like, this is such for me, I was like, something I've not seen before. And in so little time in this film, they established that dynamic between the two of them that I totally believe it. I also, there's a whole conversation about masculinity and like Will like telling him his son he has to be brave, and and then lionizing him in the play. I had one friend I talked to that was like talking about how that felt like it was sending the wrong message, and I'm like, well, that's in the text. That's like if your takeaway is that all of this is fucked up and horrible and bad and shouldn't have happened, I'm like, I think that's a perfectly valid reading of it, and it doesn't mean the movie is endorsing that. So so I really, but I would say for the most part, I bought it. Like I was on board. I was taken with it. And even if there were moments where it like got a little bit big for its britches, or was a little too transparently pressing the emotion buttons. One, I'm like, I know that Chloe Zhao is not cynical. I know that she's literally like, the trees told me to do this, so I did it, or whatever. Like she operates on such like an ethereal form that like even when she does that, I really believe that everyone around her probably said, do not use this music, and she was just like, sorry, something tells me it has to be this, and like I buy it from her in a way I wouldn't from someone else. So ultimately I think that helped me stay on board too.
I think my last thing really is sort of a twofold thing. One, that's something that Jamie actually brought up, and she's like, I really appreciated how she didn't give a fuck about his art until the end. Like it wasn't like, oh my God, he's such a genius, but he just can't get his shit together. And oh, what if he moves to life? There's none of that. Like she does not give a fuck. Like she loves him. Like
she arranges for him to go to London,
Yeah, but like she's not. It's not because like she believes
she wants him out of the house. She needs him out of the house.
Which I thought was very, very good. And then there is a reading that I've sort of heard about a couple different ways too, is like, yeah, look, he's Shakespeare, and in the eyes of history, if this was a realistic reading of what had happened, like perhaps the value given is worth the suffering of him not being there. But in the moment of this film, kind of a dick move just to fucking bail and go back to work. Totally. And again, people grieve in all different ways. Not everyone is perfect, and there's things like that. But like, I was glad how the movie even of itself didn't ever sort of like until the very end when you could say that might be a hand wave of like how powerful his art was in order to help them both heal, etc. Even though him not being there probably put her through the ringer too. Like it never is like. It doesn't ever do that cheap thing where it's like, oh, well, he was awful, but like what he made was so good that it doesn't matter. Like it all felt real and fair and unresolved. In like many things do get resolved, but like I don't think all is forgiven either in that moment of time, and grief is a process. So I really appreciated how it handled a lot of these things and how it presented them, because again, it does dip into like the mythological and ethereal, but it never feels unreal when it does so, but either then or in its very real moments of like how humans going through tragedy actually act. So yeah, I bought it too. We all bought it except Shahir didn't buy the song at the end.
Yeah, I like the song. I like the song a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the film Hamnet. Chandler, thank you so much for coming on, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a real honor to be in the ring with a couple of guys who, have surely a much deeper knowledge of film than I do. So it was a pleasure just to try to keep up. It was an absolute blast.
Where can folks find all the wonderful things that you do when you are not gracing us with your presence?
You can go to go.nebula.tv/abolish to watch season 2 of Abolish Everything. I'm not sure if we will know for a fact the release date, but I can say with great confidence it will be very early in 2026.
Nice.
So not very long from now at all. And then I'm also, and we're at Abolish Everything NYC on TikTok and Instagram. And if you don't care about Abolish Everything, you just want to see the other crap that I'm up to, I'm at Chandler J. Dean on everything.
Nice. Shahir, when you are not being or not being, where can folks find you?
You can find me smelling rotten in the state of Denmark at my website, suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA.com. Matt, when you are not making love in an Apple storage unit, where can people find you?
Oh, were there apples in there?
There was an apple house. There was the apple where they kept the apples.
I've never been in a place rich enough where they have a room specifically for the apples. You can find me just confusing all of my fruits and vegetables over at my website, Extra History and Extra Credits on the YouTube machine. Please check that out. I'll also go watch season 1 of Abolish Everything, specifically episode 6, where I was robbed. Spoiler alert. But we'll see how it goes in season 2. Next week. We have a plan, Shahir. Don't we have a plan? We said the plan.
We are going to be taking our third trip down Rian Johnson's Knives Out franchise with Wake Up Dead Man. I'll spill a little bit here. It's because I am going to be having a small surgical procedure done, which means my ability to go to the movies, it's nothing serious, by the way, but my ability to go to the movies is going to be slightly diminished. So the fact that we have a streaming film that we can go to, there are several of these, by the way. Richard Linklater's got 2 of them, Nouvelle Vague and Blue Moon, that we could do as well. So, but we have opted to take our third ride with Rian Johnson's Knives Out, which I am actually really looking forward to being able to sit up on a couch post-surgery and take in, perhaps doped up on lots of morphine.
It's the only way to fly. Then after that, I believe we'll be doing Avatar. Fire.
Avatar. It's a little tiny movie.
Oh, baby one. It's the one I hear that James Cameron's going to miss on.
What do we have we got bits on this yet? Are we saying that James Cameron's going to hit 3 home runs out of the park?
No question.
I think monetarily, no question. Here's the thing. Even if he feels like he's slipping, it's just what the machine is moving without him. I think he set up the machine.
The issue is both movies made $1 billion. So if this one makes $900 million, that'll be the failure. And it'll be like a ridiculous failure for this movie to beat out every other movie this year and still feel like a failure. The stakes are so high.
The interesting thing there is there was so much time between the first and the second one that like people had sort of culturally, I think in a lot of ways forgotten at the very least plot points and names. Like they obviously the look of the Na'vi and the world, everything. And who could forget Unobtainium? But I think now what we're like 2 years between, is that right? Yeah. 2 or 3? What is time? Yeah, we're going to see.
Yeah, just one last thing is that, the reason why people were like silly to doubt James Cameron is he produced, wrote and directed one of the greatest sequels of all time. And so everyone was like, well, of course he's going to make another great, 2 of the greatest sequels of all time, by the way, Aliens and Terminator 2. So this is the first time he's ever done a third in a franchise. And so that's the big question mark here is like, does he have the juice for 3 of these?
We're going to find out.
It's the same talking points every time, and people are left in the dust every time. 2 billion worldwide, 5 Oscar nominations, best visual effects win. Mark it, send it. It's over,
Yeah.
guys. It's over.
I don't ever
bet against them.
bet against James. Don't ever bet against Cameron.
All right. Well, we will talk at you next week. Thank you for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.